for those of you just joining us, I just introduced Bill Roorbach and Ann Hood. Bill just released Lucky Turtle, and it is a fantastic novel. I love the cover, Bill. I didn't tell you that, but I love it. And Ann just released a memoir, Fly Girl. Beautiful book. I like your cover too. Different reasons. All the covers lately seem to look alike, so it's really nice to come across some books that look a little different on the shelf. So as I understand it, the two of you are old friends. How did you meet? How did you come to know each other?
I think we met at Bread Loaf, didn't we, Bill?
We met at Bread Loaf.
Yeah.
What is
Bill
Bread
had
Loaf?
written Summers with Juliet, one of my favorite books.
It was a while back, 1992. So however long. Oh, this is 2022. So this summer it will be some kind of round number.
It's our anniversary, Bill.
Aw, it's like 30 years.
Wow. Wow.
Well, you never age, Anne. It's incredible. Anne is at a library in Sandwich, Massachusetts, on the Cape, barely on the Cape, and we both have double headers tonight because as soon as I finish this Zoom, I'm gonna jump in the car and drive down into Portland and join Barbara Shapiro to talk about her book. What's yours? You're doing a library event?
It's to Titcomb's bookstore.
Oh, that's right.
But the store is, well, it's not small, but it's medium sized. And it was you had to sign up for the event, and there's something like 80 people or something. So they moved it to the library.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful library. Sandwich is the cutest town ever. I mean, its name is Sandwich. How can it not be cute?
How could it not be cute?
Bill, you're from Maine. You live in Maine.
I live in Maine, yeah.
Yes. Were you originally from Maine?
I grew up in Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah, I tried to tell the Farmington newspaper, that's where we first arrived in Maine, that I was a New Englander so I could get some credit. But the headline, but he said, "Where were you born?" And I said, "I was born in Chicago." And the headline said, "Chicago native pens tome."
You've got the classification of from Maine.
So you never get to be
was
from
that?
Maine.
Penn's Tome?
Penn's Tome. They were not the kindest hometown newspaper.
Hey, Bill,
but I've been here 30 years.
Bill, that's better than my hometown newspaper. That when Somewhere Off the Coast of Maine, my first novel came out, they interviewed my parents. And the headline on that article was, "She sure is weird," says Lloyd Hood of daughter of writer Ann Hood. That was the headline. She sure is weird.
Oh, I love the portrait of your dad in this book.
Oh, thank you.
The ever supportive dad who picks you up at the airport and is cheerleading all the way for your career, even though it's not the one he might have imagined for you. He's just such a good character in the book, but just sounds like a great guy. I just love the other aspect of it is like, hey, we'll get free travel.
Do that job, sweetie.
That's what a real dad does, though, is like, what are the perks with everything, right? It's not the support. It's like, what are the perks? That's awesome. So I'm going to let the two of you talk, but as I try to make myself go away here for a second, I also am interested to know how New England has influenced your work. So I'm going to disappear and let you guys talk.
Well, since mine is a memoir, New England is so prominent because it's about me growing up in a small town in Rhode Island and wanting to leave that small town. And the way I did that was by becoming a flight attendant for TWA. But the first place I was based was Boston. So there's a lot of Boston details and life in Boston in 1978, 79, and 80 in the book. So I wrote about it lovingly, but since it's a memoir, I had no choice, right? Bill, how about you?
Yeah, memoir. Well, I've done a couple about Maine, Farmington, Maine, and it's like along with being self-deprecating, you can be a little bit like region deprecating, but you do have to tread carefully, right? That the object isn't to write a critique of of my town. The object
But
is
of
to
course,
tell it.
Lucky Turtle brings Montana. I mean, Montana's like a character in this book.
Well, Montana was really important to me as a teenager. I spent high school summers there. My mom thought I was screwing up, and she wasn't like your dad. I mean, she was not my greatest cheerleader, but she you know, she she made sure. She's the author of my self-doubt and and uh, and poor self-image, you know. So but she sent me out there to live with my uncle, who's a minister, thinking he would straighten me out, but he turned out to be you know, a bit of an iconoclast himself, and a great guy. I just adore him. I dedicated the book to him, you know. And his ministry was really he didn't like preaching, but he was in the streets of the town more, you know, like he would go out and find the bums and the hobos and the indigents, they were called then, and see what he could do for them, you know, just, and he was everyone's friend downtown, you know. And he introduced me to a guy who, he said I would be a good influence on this kid, about my age, maybe a little older. And he was a hellion, you know, and he was different. He was, you know, obscure heritage, you know, dark-skinned guy, wore his hair in long braids, styled himself Crow, though he was. My uncle kept reminding me he's not really Crow. I knew his mother, you know, and but his mother too, the heritage was unclear and how they got there. And his mother had died of an overdose, which was a new thing to me at that time. You know, that's about when I started hearing it. And not the idea of an overdose, but the idea that some kid you knew, his mother would have died in that kind of way was, you know, I was so innocent, and innocent of many things that he brought to light for me. So walking down the street with him, people would shout insults at him, and people would throw stuff at him, and people would throw punches, and he was often in battles. And he wasn't a guy like I was, who would you know, try to negotiate my way out of trouble or
Yeah.
run the hell out of it. He would stand right up to it, and he'd get beat up, or he'd beat someone up. If he got beat up, you know, nothing would happen. But if he beat someone up, he'd get arrested every time, you know. It was, so that was a real lesson about difference, you know. And he was a real philosopher and a great, you know, great friend, really deep thinker, who didn't go to school much, if at any at all. And just, so his way of thinking about the world was just fresh compared to mine, which was full of every myth, you know, especially American myths. And we spent time in the wilderness together, and there I could see, away from where all the rage and all the attacks and all this stuff, he could be his pure self, you know, which was this philosopher, this deep, loving, warm human, you know. So, you know, and in the wilderness, I was afraid of the animals. So like, he'd be like, oh, there's a bear sign. I'd be like, let's get out of here. And he'd be like, no, we're gonna go find it. You know? But I was afraid of the animals, but he was afraid of the people. So we'd see a horse far off, and he'd go, let's get out of here before we see that person, you know. And I'd be the opposite. I'd want to chat with somebody. So, but that was all about race, really. That was what it was about. And it was a great lesson for me, a kid. Years later, my uncle wrote me and said that he'd been killed in a bar, in a brawl. That's all he said. Kind of forgetting that we were close, you know. And I was undone by that news.
How old was he at that point, Bill? Like in his 20s?
By that time, he might have been probably mid-20s,
Yeah,
26, 27 or something.
yeah.
I went back each summer after that. The next summer, he'd gotten into some heavier stuff with drugs and people that terrified me. So I didn't hang out with them as much. And by the third summer, I just wanted nothing to do with them. And in the second summer, I also went to church camp where I met a young woman and fell in love and had my first love and first all the good things, And so those kind of things are carried forward all my life, like flavor my thinking about and the Montana wilderness. So this book kind of, I was able to resurrect my friend, but not him, but I bring him back to life, all the best parts without the fury. And, he's still suffering the slings and arrows of all the idiots, but this guy somehow fell more on his philosophical side, and also try to redeem him so that he's and that's where Lucky came from. And it's told by a woman, so that's the first love is their first love. So I was able to separate myself from it a little bit. So that's the long answer to the short question.
So while we were writing these books, Bill, we were both resurrecting people and places because, again, of course, I was writing memoir, but I'm writing about something that happened from 1978 to 1986. So it took a lot of remembering, and I always think it was like I was doing archaeology, just sort of mine the details and the facts. And as a result, I got to spend time with my old TWA roommate who lives out in Santa Barbara, and with my friend Matt, who is still my friend, but we flew together, and various other people I flew with, and, look at old pictures and old advertisements. And so it was really, in a way, the same thing, that I was resurrecting memories,
Yeah, and those people are all such great characters. I mean, they're your friends and they really exist, but when you move them onto the page, they're sort of perforce their characters. So certain things have to happen. Was it hard to go from the archaeology to storytelling, if you know what I mean? Was that
Yeah, in fact, the first maybe 10 or 12 drafts were too heavy with research and interviews, sort of. Not really, I didn't really interview, but it was sort of like I had to let everybody know how much work I had done and everything I had found out, much of which I did not need in the book, like British Airways flight attendants wore, in training. I mean, I had the most obscure information in there, which I found fascinating, but didn't really have a place. I think it's Mary Carr who said in her book, The Art of Memoir, that when you're writing about yourself as a child or a younger person, that person's actually a character. It's not even you anymore. And I think if you look at it that way, it's easier to write about, separating yourself and looking back at this naive 21-year-old with big stars in her eyes, messing up all the time and, kind of blindly moving forward, and then watching that person, me, but that person grow poised and confident, in life.
Well, it's a beautiful coming of age story, but the person telling it knows what the ending, which is different from how novels sometimes work. So it's a difficult task,
Well, you write nonfiction too, and I find it harder because you have all the information, whereas with a novel, it's so fun to just invent, and manipulate events and people, and you can make things work out the way you want that suit your fancy or suit the character's fancy. But when you have all the facts, it's hard to write a story that's interesting. You don't want to report it, right? You want to tell a story always.
And it's always that tension between like drama, where you're serving the storytelling, and the truth, but we're not like trying to be journalists when we're writing memoir. We're trying to let the reader trust us to tell the emotional truth. I always love that David Sedaris, someone said, in an audience thing, someone said, "How true are these stories of yours?" You know, and he said, "They're true enough," which I thought was perfect. And that's what I think.
Even when he answers questions, he can't help himself.
Yeah. So I want to start calling any memoir I write true stories, you know, to put that tension right in the category. But
True enough stories.
True enough by Ann Hood. I
Bill,
thought this was more than that, because you have all these billboard sections too, where it's all this great information about what the industry was like back then,
Yeah.
and this transition that was cultural too, moving via the 60s into a less formal, more you know, and the deregulation of the airlines was so
Yeah.
interesting. That there's stuff I know about, but to see it expressed through the memories of someone who's in the middle of the industry and watching things crumble was pretty fascinating.
But of
And
course,
yet,
part of what I watched was watching some of the sexism crumble. I mean,
yeah,
so that I saw age restrictions were lifted shortly before I started flying. Started flying in 1978. It used to be you had to be 32 when you left being a flight attendant, because as TWA famously said, if a man doesn't want you, we don't by the time you're 32.
wow.
Yeah, so age and, you know, marriage and pay and all of that. The last one that I witnessed firsthand was the weight restrictions, where my roommate got fired for being 5 pounds over her hiring weight. And we had been fighting, by we, I mean flight attendant unions, for decades to lift that restriction. And it's shocking to learn that it didn't get lifted until the 90s.
The 90s.
90s.
What? So I love that part of the book, which is that for all the reputation the culture wants to give to the women who were doing this, they were actually in the forefront of feminist labor movements, you know, and it's a great part of the book. It really, and I like the way you built it into the story. So it would come in, you know, your progress through flight school, and your progress through getting some seniority, and your progress getting the fuck out of there, and your progress as a writer too is alongside that. And they're both kind of these dream professions where the dream was faulty because you were a kid dreaming this dream, you know. But I just love all of that stuff. It was good.
Thanks. So Bill, I want to ask you something, because we both have these books come out around the same time.
Yeah.
Which means during the pandemic, to some degree, we were working on them. And I know the story of how you wrote Lucky Turtle and what interrupted and all that, but I'd love for you to tell people, you know, I've been getting a lot of questions about, were you able to write during the pandemic? And so I think people do wonder how we managed. Do you want to
Well,
talk about?
I had a double whammy, which is I had finished the book and I got hurt. I had a spinal injury in my neck, and I had to have emergency spinal fusion, which was, you know, it was a big deal. And it affected a lot of neurological issues attend that, because it's your spinal cord. So it was like a year before I could think clearly enough to get back to barely really to even remember that I had written the book in a way, you know. So that interrupted it. And then as that started clearing up, I was like, oh, I should try to sell this. I mean, is it finished? Oh my God, it's finished. But it wasn't really, but needed to be edited. But I did sell it. And then the pandemic came down, and that interrupted the publisher's schedule, so that their whole list for the year it was supposed to be published was pushed forward a whole year. So that was a couple of years at that point. And those couple of years, a lot of things had changed in the culture, you know. So the book had to be so when I read it again, it felt old fashioned, just being 2 or 3 years old.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting how much things changed?
They changed. But then in terms of writing, I think for me, life is sort of like that anyway. If I don't have a book to peddle, Although we lost a lot of work, right?
So much.
Like going to talk at a college or conferences. So there was none of that travel. But I think it was kind of like my life wasn't that different. I'd sit around with my mouth open, dreaming about characters.
I know. I do think that maybe writers had it easier than a lot of other jobs because I sat around in my pajamas anyway. It wasn't really changing. But you're right. Our travel was curtailed, and things that we sometimes make money doing were definitely curtailed. Going to conferences, or some went online, some didn't. Some went online and paid you much less because you were not there, and there were all versions of that. So we definitely felt it, I think, economically, but I don't think my day-to-day life was so different. Except I was washing like boxes from the grocery store and not letting them in my house. Things like that.
That's funny to remember what before we really knew what was going on, and then also the political layers were so outrageous that day to day I felt oppressed by all of that. I don't think that helped my writing, but
no, I had done the research for Fly Girl, but I had not actually started writing it. So it was actually kind of nice to write a book about travel and being away when you couldn't do it. So I could live vicariously through my book, and remembering. I don't know if I hadn't been locked down like that, if I would have remembered with such detail a particular layover in Cairo that I write about. But I really took the time to think about what I did and what I was told, my first time in that chaotic, beautiful, exotic, historic city. I'll always remember being there for the first time, but I could really cull a lot more details because I was desperate to go somewhere.
Yeah, nice. Well, one of my favorite innovations of the pandemic was like having FaceTime cocktails with you and Michael and many other friends. It was like, oh right, there's a way to like get together that I think it's never going away,
I mean, we wouldn't be here tonight if it wasn't for Zoom, and
that's true.
And I certainly hadn't been Zooming before the pandemic. I had one meeting for the Newport MFA where Bill teaches, and I direct it. And there are two of our students here. At least I saw Aggie and I saw Judith come on. So hi guys, program. Can't wait to see you until June. See you in June. But we had a meeting for the MFA, and one of the faculty members is in California. So she's like, we said, well, we can FaceTime. She goes, no, let's Zoom. And we were all like kind of rolling our eyes. This was in February of 2020. And she's like, no, it's super easy. I'm going to tell you what to do. And we're like, Zoom. So we do it, and we're all at a restaurant, and it was so easy. And we're so giddy with, like new, it's so fun. This is funny. And little did I know I'd be doing it for the next 2 years constantly, right?
We're all Zoom experts now, Now I want to ask Heidi like how it's gone for a bookstore. She's just saying in the chat about like if you want to buy these books, it's like it's kind of made your job a little different too, right? If you have an event like this, put in time, and how are you doing with it?
I'm just going to say that Zoom is not the same as face-to-face. It's not, but I'm so grateful for it because I've been able to have some incredible events for our store that we live at the end of nowhere. So the likelihood of taking a trip up here would take several days, Anne, because you'd have to drive up and you're welcome to come anytime, just so you know. But it's been one of those things where our ability to have events has actually gotten a lot better because of these Zoom opportunities, Right. And I feel that it gives us a little more credibility, to be honest. We have such a supportive community, and this is a funny story. I think we sold more books that first month that we were shut down with the doors closed than we had the previous 6 months.
Oh,
And it was hilarious because in the state of Maine, right, we can buy pot wherever we want. And there were people saying that, and it was considered an essential service at that time. It was so funny because they were saying, I never thought that I'd be able to legally buy pot and have to meet a bookseller in a dark alley to get a book. That's what I was doing.
that's
And
really funny.
I was at the point of calling myself the shady book lady, and it was great and it was wonderful because I think it really gave, I wanted this community to feel like this was their bookstore. And I think that's one of the positive things about the pandemic is it really gave them that ownership to do that. So
I
and
love,
it's been
I
great.
love that. I love that you're the farthest north bookstore in the US. And
Yeah.
that Maine also has the furthest east bookstore. And in Hawaii, I went to the furthest west bookstore. So when I got home from Hawaii, I had to go to Eastport for something. So I went to that bookstore and said, I bring you greetings from the farthest west bookstore. I
That's-
swear the same cat was in both places. I swear.
So what island is that on?
Kauai.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I'm forgetting the town. It's called Talk Story Bookstore. They have a Facebook page. It's the prettiest little Western looking store, you know.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's when I had Remedy for Love. And I
Yeah.
said, I went in there and I said, just joking. I said, you guys have my book? You know, he goes, who are you? Told him, he goes, oh, Remedy for Love. Yeah, it's in the snow section.
Oh,
And people really miss snow. So I have a whole snow section.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's been selling very well. So, but
It's snowing when it opens, isn't it? Doesn't it, Bill? If I'm remembering right, it opens during
yeah,
the
it just
snow.
snows and snows and
Yeah,
snows.
yeah.
So,
So Heidi, are there questions? I want to.
we do have a
give everybody-
question that's come out, and before I get to, it's Brittany Bollier that had asked that, and I'm going to get to her question in a second, but I did want to say one thing to the both of you, is
Yeah.
in our area here in Fort Kent, I have relatives that come from Allagash, which is a tiny little town at the head of the Allagash Wilderness Waterway. And storytelling is such a phenomenal aspiration. It's always something that's been really revered. And in that town, it's verbal, it's not written as much, you know.
Yeah,
And of
right.
course, we have Kathy Pelletier. We had a Maine poet laureate for some time, Jim Connors. But I just wanted to say to the both of you, what incredible storytellers you are. I get
Nice.
so many advanced reading copies of books that are coming out, and it feels, unfortunately, sometimes it feels like it's more about getting published than it is about writing the story. And
Oh,
I just feel like it was just a joy reading both of yours, as different as they are. It was easy to get sucked into both of them. So I just wanted to make sure I said that before.
thank you. Thank you so much.
So that being
I
said,
have one thing I want to say to Anne, which is
Sure.
that, and to everyone, which is that I've been on book tour, and I would in the car I listened to Anne's book on Audible. Normally that would be a fine experience, but Anne was reading it. So it was like I had Anne telling me the story for like 9 hours.
Oh boy, my dulcet
would've been-
tones, 9 hours.
It was so good. And it was just every time I got in the car, it's like, okay, Anne, you ready to keep telling me some stuff? It was really like being with you. And you're such a good reader. It was
Oh, it
fun.
was fun to do that. It was really fun. Oh, Sarah Dunham's on too, Bill. I'm seeing
Oh,
so
good.
many
Hi,
new
Sarah.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah.
So I'm sorry to interrupt you,
Oh.
Heidi.
No, I only segueing into Brittany's question. She's just recently received her master's in social work, and she has a book that was published for research. But she's an avid reader and she really enjoys writing. And if she were ever to set a goal of publishing a novel, where would she even start? Do you have any advice for her?
the Newport MFA,
Wow,
right?
I agree. Low residency, so you can keep doing your work. And
Mhm.
that it is that kind of apprenticeship is so different from any other kind of apprenticeship. It's great that you published a book, so you know a few of the things you need to know already. One of them is finishing something. That's a big deal. So congratulations on that. But yes, I think Newport MFA is a great pick, but there's a lot of them, But if that's something that's not possible for you, where do you? I guess you start by writing it, right?
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Does Brittany live? Where does she live? Is she near
She
you,
lives,
Heidi? Or?
yes, she lives up in Madawaska, Maine, which is about half an hour down the road
Okay.
or up the
Because I was
road.
just wondering, I mean, I always think that there's two things and they're counterintuitive that you need to write a book. One is you need to be alone and not distracted and have the time. And the other thing is you need a community to be in. And so they seem like, wait a minute, those are opposite things. But you need support. And no one really gets what it's like writing a novel unless they've done it or they're doing it. So you want those cheerleaders and those critics and writing pals to spend time with. Bill's in a writing group. That sounds fabulous. Right? There's 5 of you, Bill?
Yeah, 5 of us.
Yeah.
All Maine novelists. And are you in a writing group, Anne? Or I know you
I'm
share
not
your
good with
stuff.
groups. I don't play well with others.
Yeah, well, in a way I don't, and we do battle a little bit, but there's 5 of us, and we figured out in like our 5th meeting, probably, we figured out that all 5 of us are from families with 5 kids. And we just all feel really comfortably, combative but it's like a better family than any of us came from. Not that my family's not wonderful, but because in this way, we're all novelists and we all get what each other's doing. We don't say anything dumb to each other about
Yeah.
about being writers, So it's been very helpful and supportive.
Yeah.
And
I'm always jealous of good writing groups, but I don't really partake. But I think if someone wants to write a novel or anything, short story, any nonfiction, having that alone time to get the words on the page and watch those pages build up, but also having a community for feedback and support, both those things are kind of really important.
Just to have that audience and
Yeah.
a sense that there are others doing that and suffering all the same ways that you're suffering.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, Newport MFA is one of the warmest, best, and most supportive setups I've seen. And we just really love, well, it's going to be so great to be back in person, Anne. Oh my gosh.
Great. Oh my gosh.
So who are we talking to again, Heidi?
So that was Brittany
Oh,
Bollier.
Brittany.
And Brittany, I'll tell you that if you're interested in a writing group, that was a good point that Bill was talking about. I might have some information for you. So next time you come into the bookstore, ask me about it and I'll be sure to get that information to you.
Just count your siblings first.
And yes, that sounds like the tricky thing, right? We have another question that's come in from Anne. I'm going to get your last name wrong. I'm so sorry, Anne. Lagravenus.
She's our friend.
Wow, totally different. Thank you for being here. Bill, this is a question for you. Were you writing Lucky Turtle while we were all at Spanokia?
Oh, that's right. You met him.
Spanokia.
I forgot that you guys were there at the same time. Of course you were.
Yeah.
Our friend Anne. Yeah. That was, Anne probably remembers when it was. I have the worst memory.
Anne, can I unmute you and spotlight you for a sec? Okay, she says, hold on a second, everybody. I'm going to add your spotlight.
Hi, Anne.
I'm going to unmute.
Oh my God. Hello. Hi.
Connecticut?
I'm in Connecticut. I'm making some bread, of course. I was wondering about that because first of all, I was the only person there who wasn't a writer. And, but there was a spot available and it was my 65th birthday. And so Michael had said, you should come. And my husband's like, yes, go. This would be amazing for you to go. So I went on this really fantastic trip and I was very, very lucky to be around all these writers. But I was wondering, I had no idea that like Lucky Turtle was brewing. And I was wondering if it was, a twinkle in your eye at the time, or because this was 5 years ago, November, this coming November.
That's what I was trying to remember when it was. November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have trouble saying if I may have just been starting the first, sort of tentative steps into it.
Right.
But I think that's right around when I started. Yeah. But
my other question is, it's such an incredibly visual read. And I mean, it's just everybody, if you haven't read it, you got to read it. But do you see it as a series? Do you ever like imagine it as like a TV series? A mini series? All of this stuff by what's his name, Taylor Sheridan. He does like Yellowstone and 1883 and then all that. But this is so the story. It's so unusual on so many levels. From Massachusetts to Montana to San Francisco, and all of these things, and just that incredible, sequence of Montana is just mind blowing.
Thank you so much. All I can say is it would be great to be part of a project like that, and that we're trying, and that I have.
I'll get on it.
Oh, get on it for me. That'd be helpful.
I'll get on it.
My mother would say, from your mouth to God's ears.
Right.
That just enough to say that would be really fun and exciting. And then you could fill in all those pages I had to cut. I could put back in for season 6.
Right. Exactly.
What are we gonna do? Season 5.
Well, I was really so surprised, when the book actually ended. I was like, wait, what? It's over? The saga's done.
You could
And I
probably
guess-
keep going.
Yeah.
And what do you have any? Can you picture Fly Girl as a movie
I
or
only
television?
finished Lucky Turtle this morning, and Fly Girl is up next.
All right, good.
I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely. It's all
Thank you.
there. It's all ready.
Thanks
I'll
for
start it
reading.
tonight. How about that?
Thanks for
Okay.
reading, and thanks for
Yeah.
such
Thank
kind
you.
words.
To see your face.
Welcome.
Yeah, I think it would make a. I think it would make a.
Fabulous, Sam.
I think it would make a great movie, and you wouldn't even have to have all the murders like in the flight attendant.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
I
yeah.
know.
Oh, my
Like-
God. Yeah. What do you think about what did
You
she
could
think?
probably kill off a few people and make it work.
I haven't read it or seen it because when you're writing a book about the same topic, you kind of don't want to. So I'm one of the few people who's in the dark about it.
No, yours is it was utterly different, and it could be amazing. But the answer to that question is,
You don't
well,
know, yeah.
I wish, but
Sure.
there's a billion other projects get in line,
Yeah, exactly.
And I
Exactly.
gotta tell you, when I was reading some of your book, all I kept thinking of was that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can.
Oh,
Have you?
right, and I think that was actually TWA.
It
It was
was great,
before my time, but yeah.
but it was just like so like the pilot would walk by and all the women would swoon, and it was just that's exactly what I was thinking of. So I could totally
That's
see
funny.
yours as some sort of series as well.
Yeah, let's go. I love this conversation. It's great. Great ideas.
So to all the producers listening out there, Ann and I are at your beck and call.
Right. Exactly.
All it takes is money. But that's a horrible thing to end on. So let's see if I can do better than that. And I thought I knew I would like the book, and I knew it would be entertaining, and I knew it would be I'd learn a lot from it. But I was really really moved and taken by surprise by how much it's the story of our culture along with everything else, and the progress we've made and not made. And it's just it's got such a wide vision, and yet it's this perfect core of storytelling, which is the coming of age story of a person I really love. And reading the book, I even love her more. And after 9 hours in the car with you.
And you still loved me. I didn't even make you stop a lot. I didn't.
Oh, I had to stop to cry a little over your brother there, but that was rough. Yeah.
Bill, I love seeing your face, and I love Lucky Turtle. And you know, there's something, but I say this about all your books, so I feel like I'm being redundant, but I mean it. Like, you have such a big heart, and it comes through in all your books, every one of them. This big, open, generous spirit that you are, it just always comes through with your characters and the way you tell a story. There's such a Bill Roorbachism that I love, and I'm happy to see you. I'm sorry we're not together at the end of the world.
But soon we will be, and maybe it'll end while we're in Newport, and maybe Brittany will be there. So I just want to thank you so much for having us. And you're right, this is the only way that I could drive to Fort Kent from here in like one Anne Hood book.
Yes.
But it's a long way.
You could. And if you ever do decide to come, you are more than welcome. Please let me know that you are coming.
I'll be up there sometime.
I'll let you know. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank you both for doing this. I really appreciate it. And it was so lovely to talk to both of you. So
thanks everybody who joined us.
Thanks everybody. Buy some books from Heidi.
Yeah, get books from Heidi. I think she put up a link.
Yes, boganbooks.com.
Yeah.